the comments received from the Chesfolds and from Mr. Bradley will be treated as I've treated every other public comment on any matter I've ever handled as chairman of this board. So if anybody has any questions about my disclosure, you feel free to raise them now. Anybody have any objection to my serving as panel chair as a result of my disclosure?
I'd like to field that question.
Yeah, I prefer not to address.
In the past, I mean, this is still a small town and we pretty much know that everyone knows everyone. And it's pretty much been handled that way unless there's a real business arrangement where money changes hand. We typically don't want someone to recuse themselves.
That said, is there any other comments? Any objection to my proceeding as chair? I need a verbal response. Thank you. Oh, and I'm sorry, I didn't introduce Caitlin McKenzie, who is with us virtually. Caitlin is also a member of the board. And let's begin with the applicant. Excuse me, let's begin with the staff.
Yeah, give me one moment. I'm trying to get joined into the meeting here. This. That's jumping me from the link. Alex, it's from our link, it's putting me into the planning commission meeting. You know, let me.
Let's go to the.
Yeah, well, I was here in the planning. Where I've done this before. Now I'm in business.
Jeremy, then you
Apologies for that.
ready to proceed?
I am ready to go. It looks like we're up and online. And so this is, as mentioned, the staff report for PL 2023-0103 for 2988 Honeysuckle Lane, major adjustment. This property, as you may or may not know, is a vacant parcel that sits at the end of Honeysuckle Lane, where it terminates into a cul-de-sac. There, the way it's situated, you'll see one of the parcels basically is comprised of river. The other remaining vacant parcel is the parcel here in question. It's zoned RN3, which allows for duplexes as the applicant is requesting, given that the lot is in excess of 12,000 square feet. This property is about 15,600 square feet. Significant portions of this lot do sit in delineated wetlands, which reduce the buildable lot area per a 1980 U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permit, where they established a boulder retaining wall The applicant is proposing a 3,253 square foot duplex on this vacant lot. The major adjustments that are being requested, there is in this zone district RN3, we have both a front principal building and a front attached garage setback. The principal building is meant to be 15 feet from the front property line. The applicant is requesting 8'7". As the minimum, there are two sections of duplex. The further duplex is 14'11". Then for the front attached garage, we have a standard of 20 feet. The applicant on the near garage is requesting 10'7", and on the far garage, 16'11". As we look through some of the criteria for approval, first of all, we found it to be in full compliance with requirements of the applicable zone district. It should be noted, however, staff did approve a minor variance on the average plate height based upon the constraints and engineering standards. So we do this administratively. It's when it's minor and there are unique site conditions whereby we couldn't have them lower the building and the site topography was such that such a marginal adjustment was required. They have not exceeded the overall height, but again, the average plate height. So that adjustment was done. It is still in compliance with the CDC. Criteria for approval number 2 does not constitute a grant of special privilege inconsistent with the limitations upon uses of other properties in the vicinity. Staff find that the constraints placed on this property through the topography, the shape, the wetland delineation, and the building envelope are unique in this neighborhood, and any adjustments would not constitute a grant of special privilege. If I can, I'm going to go ahead and share screen here so I can give an exhibit. If you'll go ahead and look at the screens above, you can see here where our parcel sits in the northwest far corner of Honeysuckle Lane, again, terminating here sort of on the edge or end of the cul-de-sac. The other adjacent property to the immediate south is basically comprised of river and is unbuildable in this case. When we look at the exhibit here to start to talk through what the parameters are in the building envelope that I just referenced, there is a magenta dashed line here. That's the building envelope created by the Army Corps of Engineer wetlands, which was established to the rear, as well as the by code setback that you see in the magenta on the front, and of course on the sides, and floodways and other vehicles that permit the restrictions of that. There was a stone wall built here, not in alignment with the building envelope, so that does actually constrict the lot further. This existing condition, that stone wall can't be changed per the Army Corps of Engineers permit. So those are the conditions that we're referring to when we talk about there's wetlands, floodplain to the south, there's a stone retaining wall that exists there. And of course, any constraints proposed by the Community Development Code. In this case, for criteria number 3, we did find that a major adjustment would be necessary or due to these special circumstances, as we outline size, shape, topography, location, or surroundings of the subject property, to provide it with use rights and privileges permitted to other properties in the vicinity and in the applicable zone district. In this case, those rights would be the fact to develop a duplex on a lot greater than 12,000 square feet. The applicant has shown to us that the constraints placed on the site make that very difficult, but this relief in the form of a major adjustment would allow for that to occur. Special circumstances of the subject property make the strict application of the standard an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and special circumstances are not a result of the actions of the property owner or the applicant. Property owner was not responsible for the establishment of the building envelope, lot platting, or the construction of the stone retaining wall. And therefore, we found it to be an unnecessary hardship. Lastly, the major adjustment will not incur adversely impact legal conforming uses of the adjacent property. I will jump ahead. We have some adjacent property owners here tonight. I know we've had public comment that was submitted. You should find in the packet that you received. This could be something up for debate. If you have further questions on this, feel free to ask, and I'm going to try to review and address some of these as best as I can as staff reviewed them. Staff did and still finds this to be consistent in that the variance requested here would not adversely impact the neighboring properties for some of the following reasons. We find that front yard setbacks principally are there to control a lot of sight lines, to control the regularity with which buildings are set, to ensure that there's adequate room in the front yard for landscaping and such. In the case that this property is already mentioned to be unique, we find here at the end of a cul-de-sac, as it turns a corner, this building is not in alignment with any other adjacent buildings, as might be typical along a straight line of streets. The placement of the building in itself as well, whether moved forward or backwards, doesn't seem to have a negligible effect on the sight lines or review of the space. And when reviewing this, one thing I looked at, you'll see in the exhibit, if, for instance, we take away the whole yellow portion of the building, that would bring it back into the compliance with the 20-foot setback of the garage. The house itself actually could be halfway in between. It could be at 15 feet. But what you'll notice there on the sort of southernmost corners of the building, as you approach from the east, driving west down the street, if you were to push the building back, I made rough measurements because I was trying to understand the impact. I found it to be about a 2.5 foot offset, all things considered. I found this to be negligible and fairly unnoticeable to the public. I'm not discrediting the fact that the building, I think some of the public comment was that it would be a large building, and they're maximizing the full availability of the site, which I believe is true, but I also believe to be in their right in the RN3 zone district. It is quite a bit probably denser than the surrounding neighborhood, but that is what the zone district allows them to build. I know some people visited the site today. I made sure to stop out there as well. This is a photo for reference to start to understand what that condition looked like. There are corners of the lot denoted here with some arrows on the corners. They do have field stakes out there. This would be the corner of the building for what it's worth, the far most southern corner, the most left-hand corner. There is a couple more criteria I should address as well. I apologize. One being whether or not this is a least modification possible of the standard to afford relief to the applicant. In this case, to make the appropriate accommodations for the floor plates, staff after review did find that any reduction of this, pushing the floor plate back or making the first floor plate smaller, really would have a significant detrimental impact to the development of this site as a duplex lot. Number 7, when considering the amount of variation requested, any existing nonconformity will be considered. This is not applicable. There's no existing nonconformities. And same with There's no existing community goals or policies that directly relate to this. Staff finds that 2988 Honeysuckle Lane, PL 202-30103, for a front yard setback adjustment of the principal buildings and attached garages is consistent with the criteria for approval of a major adjustment.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff from the board?
Yeah, I have one question, Jeremy.
Just one thing, Mr. Box is new. He's our alternate. And while you cannot vote when we do our vote on this major adjustment, you are certainly allowed to participate in the hearing.
Great, thank you. Just for clarity, one of the requests is the proposed reduction in the front line setback. How many feet is that actually from the concrete? Is there the lot line to the concrete? Is that that's an additional number of feet, correct?
Sure. As you can see in the exhibit I've put up here on the screen, we try often not to measure to, in this case, the existing asphalt road, because that can change. The city can take full use of the right of way. Under the circumstances at the end of the cul-de-sac, it's not going to continue any further or likely adjust too much, but it is about 40 feet. The face of building is about 40 feet back from the existing asphalt as planned.
So that would be between 25 and 30 feet to lot line.
Yeah, that would
Thinking
be,
about that right?
yeah, believe so.
Give or take. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
I just have
David.
one quick, well, maybe two questions.
Sure.
The one sentence in the packet caught my eye.
Yep.
It says, since 2010, this lot seems to have been sold every 2 years,
Yep.
and it's always been denied. And has anything happened or changed over the history of this to make this more relevant today?
That was a comment that came in from public comment. I can't confirm or deny that those are true. It's not something I've researched or know about. So, and
Page 110 of the packet. I thought it was part of the staff.
yeah, there was a memo in a report from public comment that I believe talked about the turnover of the property, but it's not something I'm aware of or could comment on. And I don't know of anything in the history of this project or this property that became readily apparent that I could share.
And one other question, what are the rules with wetlands? What can the homeowner do with a wetland area? Can they do anything?
You certainly can't build structures onto wetland. I would have to review this permit specifically to see, sometimes there are allowable things, like I know you can, a lot of times build, like it's possible to build boardwalks or things through wetlands, but it would be specific to this permit if something like that were allowed.
Escape it? Can you mow it? Can you?
Typically, no, you can't do anything like that with wetlands. You can't, because you're ruining the wetland vegetation.
Those are it.
Any other questions of staff?
Just to clarify, they're not requesting a water body setback variance. You guys-
Correct. There's nothing, this is only a front setback variance.
And when they come in for a building permit, they will be subject to the duplex building criteria in the CDC. They're not requesting a variance for that.
Correct. Yeah, everything under this, in this application, it gets reviewed for those standards and against those standards. Yeah.
Who is going to present on behalf of the applicant? Yeah, please go to the podium. Sure. Before you begin, will you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information you'll give this board is accurate to the best of your ability?
I do.
You please state your full name.
Dominic Anthony Alvis.
Please proceed.
Hi, guys. I'm Dominic Alvis. Call me Dom. This is my wife, Amelia. and our 3-month-old son, Leo. So we're excited to be here with you all, with the opportunity just to state our case and to meet some of our neighbors and potential neighbors that we'll probably meet down the road as well. So a little backstory. My wife and I are both from very small towns in Iowa, about 1,200 with my own town of Logan, Iowa, and 300 with her town of Norway, Iowa. So we get what being in a small town is like. We get that everybody is your neighbor, right? And the intimacy that's involved is really one of the many things of why we fell in love with this community. Forgive me if I lose my train of thought. My son hasn't been sleeping well for the past 2 nights. So this is what you see on pure adrenaline and coffee for the past 2 nights. So if I'm jittery, just give me the benefit of the doubt, please. So I just wanted to just sort of, let me just gather myself here. Just take the time. Okay, so my wife and I, when we first came to Steamboat, it was after finishing college, where we attended the University of Iowa. I hope there's more friendlies than foes in this crowd. Go Hawks, by the way. So setting out using my wife's skill as an architect, and just sort of the savviness and resourcefulness that I have as a sales rep, we are setting out to accomplish our dream of getting the little slice of Steamboat that you all know and love. And in doing this, we knew that we're up against a huge obstacle because we both come from very low middle-class families, very hardworking. And we knew that if we played our cards right, one day an opportunity would open up and we would have the chance to join this community. So when this land came up, we sold our home in Omaha, Nebraska, with the intention of moving straight here and focusing on the build. Now, life happens, guys, and my, sorry, I don't know why I became so emotional, but my wife, we got pregnant, great. But something that had happened, it was pretty traumatic. And again, I'm sorry, this isn't me. I'm usually the tough, stoic one. But there was a high-risk pregnancy, and the week that we were supposed to come out, and I told these guys behind me that we were going to meet everybody, talk through these things. Her water broke 2 months early. And God, I don't know if you've ever been parents, but that is so scary. So we've regrouped. And so we've set a path, and we're so excited, guys, to join you guys all here. I understand there's some objections, the anxiety of having a new neighbor. I get it. We've sold our home. We lived in my brother's shed to save up money. And then we've moved 2 other times just to help save money. So I understand the anxiety of what comes with a new neighbor, right? And I guess it's okay, if it's okay to speak our intentions. We are intending to live here in the town of Steamboat, right? My wife and I are both 32. We don't come from extraordinary wealth, but we've worked our way up to get to this opportunity. And so I guess I'm excited to join all of you. And there are a few things that I think, Jeremy, you addressed really well. I think there's just some logistical things that, hey, great job. Our intention is to not become a burden on anybody, but our intention is to grab our little slice of Steamboat, right, in a way that we can, number one, live here ourselves, and number two, afford it while giving someone else, a family that we're going to live right beside, an opportunity to live here as well. And so if there's anything else that my wife would like to include, is there anything else?
Well, let's do it one at a time.
Okay.
Are you finished?
I'm finished. Thank you all. I look forward to becoming a part of the community one day. Thank you.
Hang on for questions. Any questions of Mr. Albus?
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Ms. Albus, you are welcome to address the board. And I need you to raise your hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information you give this board is the truth, is accurate to the best of your ability?
Yep. My name is
Please.
Amelia K. Alvis.
Please proceed.
And so I guess, again, thank you, Jeremy, for kind of laying some of those things out. We were traveling, and so I didn't have a chance to kind of do exactly what you did. I know some of the objections were for the view shed. Again, I'm the architect of this place, and I think one reason why it may not have been developed before was because paying an architect can sometimes be outside the means of people. I get to do work for free, so that's why I think, again, I designed a place that I would want to live. And so we pushed it as far back as we possibly could to make sure that we were not obstructing any neighbors' views. We designed a place that a family would be able to live in. So again, 2-car garages, which is kind of hard to fit sometimes just because they get really wide. But again, the goal was to provide something that would anchor the street and kind of block the commercial properties to the back and kind of buffet some of the noise from the auto repair shop. And then as far as parking, because I know this is a cul-de-sac and many families use that for turnarounds. Again, that was part of the reason for 2-car garages, was so that people could actually park in the Steamboat winter and you don't have to shovel 5 feet of snow off your car. And then also to provide that cul-de-sac to continue to act within the interest of the neighborhood. I think that's all I have to say.
Any questions for Ms. Alvis?
Do you know the square footage of the units?
Yeah, so each one is, I think one side is about 1,500 square feet and the other is about 1,700 square feet. So again, trying to design for a family, basically.
Any other questions? Hearing none, Ms. Alvis, thank you.
you.
We now move on to the public comment portion of the hearing. I see 3 members of the public here. Have you decided any kind of order that you want to present in, or this is your opportunity to speak to the board? Okay. And would you raise your right hand, please? You solemnly swear or affirm that the information you give this board is accurate to the best of your ability.
I do.
Please state your full name and your address.
Sebastian Lucas Bradley, and I live at 2900 Honeysuckle Lane, just 2 doors down from the site we're looking at here. We've been in the neighborhood since 2010, my wife and kids and I. So coming up on 15 years now. And yeah, we saw the proposal go up and we had some concerns with it. And then with this major setback that's come up, we have some further concerns about parking and whether there's going to be adequate room for parking with the garage being so close to the street. You say you'll park in the garage. I see a lot of people in this town, everyone has their toys and garages are rarely used for their cars. So I'm worried that the cars are going to end up on the asphalt and restrict the turnaround capabilities there for vehicles. So that's one of the concerns we have. The other one is, my understanding is that like the duplex design standards are kind of in place to mitigate the predominance of a garage and make it not so huge and in your face. And their design to me is doing the opposite. And if you allow it to go 10 feet closer to the road, I think that's only making it more apparent and more dominant, which in my mind doesn't fit the design standards. And then the other issue that we kind of were looking at is with the snow, if I think there was like a 10-foot utility snow easement between the asphalt and the house. And I don't know if that's something that is even up for discussion here. But it's another concern for us is, if the house is so much closer to the asphalt, what are they going to do with the snow? They're having a small driveway. We're going to make it smaller by moving the house further. And then, yeah, it just seems like there should be an alternative to changing up the design. The square footage sounds more than adequate to me for the duplexes that they're looking for. And then, yeah, I know like there's other design standards that are supposed to make the duplexes look more like a single family house than duplexes. And to me that these designs don't do that. And yeah, those are the concerns we have. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Bradley?
Thanks.
Thank you.
This is Caitlin McKenzie.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Bradley, come back to the podium, please. Caitlin,
Well,
go ahead.
It's not specifically for Mr. Bradley, but could the planning office comment on the design standards for a duplex and how this project meets or doesn't meet those criteria that Mr. Bradley brought up?
Sure. A couple of the things about our duplex design standards. We have standards and we have guidelines. Standards are enforceable to the letter, things like like you would consider setbacks in this case. Our guidelines are recommendations, and one of our guidelines is in such a case would be that you don't have more than one garage door or two single garage doors facing the same street. A lot of times we try to turn corners or have one to not be visible. And this is along with the guideline about making it look like a single family home. That is a guideline. Under the circumstances, I think some approval and acceptance of this setback, they sort of go hand in hand. Staff felt if this setback major variance gets approved, that makes the determination about how enforceable a guideline is. So it would be impossible to make them put their garages on two separate faces under the existing conditions of the site. But if this major variance is approved, I don't know if that thought process makes sense, and feel free to ask a question if it does not.
So you would say that they are meeting all of the design standards, like you said, those are enforceable, that they meet all of those standards. It's just the
Correct.
recommended guidelines that they're not exactly in line with some of those.
Yeah, so Mr. Bradley was correct in his statements where our guidelines recommend and encourage it to look like a single family residence. They recommend and encourage that we don't have two garages facing the same street. But again, under review, let's say we'll take the major adjustment out of it. If no major adjustment were involved and it was impossible for them to get their two garages facing, perpendicular separate directions, we would not necessarily have the standard to force that to happen.
Just one more question on that note. Are the guidelines kind of for all neighborhoods, or if you're in a neighborhood that has all duplexes, in all duplex lots, would you still want to see them appear to look like single family homes?
Yeah, every duplex in the community is meant to appear like a single family home. And they don't apply by neighborhood or zone district. It is by building type. So whenever somebody builds a duplex, they follow our duplex design standards and guidelines.
Is that different if you build two townhomes that are subdivided and sold separately, or is that still under the duplex design standards?
If it's two units connected together, it would be a duplex.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a tricky thing we went through with city council a few weeks back when they were looking at some zoning things, and there are building types and then there are zoning types. And then, so you can condo plat something, something could be called a townhome, but it could also be a duplex, because if there's two townhomes together, we call that a duplex, and it would fall under our duplex design standards.
Okay, so the end goal of kind of owning it all as a duplex versus subdividing it doesn't affect the design standards.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
If it were condo platted and owned separately or whatever, it would still be a duplex.
Got it. Okay. No more questions. Thank you for elaborating on that.
Sure.
Any other questions from the board?
That was the question I had. Design standards, guidelines. The only thing is,
You put your mic down.
didn't we have a duplex come in not too long ago where it was designed correctly, where one was on the side, one door was on the side, one was on the front. And he had to come before the board in order to get that changed to two in the front. Why would that be?
Honestly, I'm not sure, and I wish we had our
The one on-
director here comment on it.
Snowflake?
It was, that neighborhood was in the mountain area and it was not a guideline. It was a requirement.
Oh, that was a requirement?
It could be, they may have could it have been out of our base area standards or something else?
It was on Snowflake out there. It just seemed weird that
Yeah.
all of a sudden that was, now you're talking about guidelines.
Yeah,
We thought that was a standard.
yeah, I wish I had more information on that, and
Hmm.
I do not.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, feel free to step to the podium to share, so.
You can bring the baby.
Right, I just read the guidelines a lot. So I think if you're able to have a garage door on one side and a garage door on another, that's a standard. But if you are not able to do that, then you're would be clear.
That could be, if it was located on a corner lot, then it may be a required.
And that was exactly
standard.
like this. The case was that it was difficult to put it on the side.
Mhm.
So then when they built the thing, they realized that they can't turn into it. It was impossible. And so then they remember they had the hole and everything. They had to take down the front wall to put a door and then put it in the sidewall. And it seems like they were forced to do it.
And that
Long.
mountain areas, I mean, they could have hit a huge. boulder,
Okay.
um,
It was weird, but they had to come before the board to get it.
To be able to do it in the front. And I
Yeah.
think that's where if they were able to do it on the side,
Mhm.
if it was complicated, they would have had to do that, but then it became like an undue hardship.
Yeah,
And so then you have to come and get the variance approved.
exactly.
So, yes, thank you, Amelia, for bringing that up. It does come out of our access standards for duplex. It is a standard that duplexes on corner lots shall have one garage facing each street unless accessed off the alley or otherwise directed by a city access review. So that seems like that may have been the case.
Yeah, it wasn't on a corner, but it was just,
If they had an alley access or another opportunity to access.
yeah, okay. That's why that happened.
Let's get focused back on the application here. Any other member of the public wishes to address the board? Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information you give this board is accurate to the best of your ability?
I will.
Would you please say your full name and your address?
My name is Matthew John Woodington Chesfold. I live at 2944 Honeysuckle Lane, the adjacent property to the subject application.
Thank you.
I want to begin by addressing a question that Mr. Levine had for Mr. Brown earlier about the property going into sale about every 2 years. I did address that in my comments in my public letter. And it was in response to something that was said in the application narrative. I moved to Riverside in 2013 as a renter. I bought my house, the same house that I rented in 2016. In 2016, I think I say in my letter, the lot sold for $165,000. In 2018, it sold for $252,000. 2020, it sold for $295,000. And finally, according to the application, it sold in 2022 for $395,000. The economics of a build before COVID, in my estimation, in my interpretation, in discussing these issues with the people who own the previous lots, was the major impediment to building there. Not the size or shape of the lot itself, and not the setbacks, not the USACE limitations, of which we all have in our neighborhood on the north side of Honeysuckle Lane. There's a wetland that runs the entire length of that. We all have Army Corps of Engineers limitations on our properties. So it was the economics, because if you bought it for $295,000 or even $252,000 in 2018, and you're putting a $300,000 structure. Well, if you looked at the tax records of the tax assessed values for our neighborhood, our homes were worth like $500,000 to $600,000 before COVID. Of course, that shot up after COVID. And now the economics of building there make a lot more sense. And when I say that, I really mean to say that the economics of building a single family home on that lot make a lot more sense. It's not a requirement now in order to get your money's worth or to get the value out of it that you have to build a duplex. And that leads me to my next thought about undue hardship. You know, how do we define undue hardship? Do we move to a hardship and then ask for permission to change that hardship? I think all of the realities of this lot, the size, the odd shape, the limitations from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the setbacks, those were all known. Is this my time?
Please, you,
Okay,
Go ahead.
all of these things were known at the time that the Alvises bought the property. And I think to come in now and to say it is an undue hardship, we want to create a livable space, you know, it'd be impossible to build on this lot. I just don't think that those things are true, because all of those things were known at the time that this lot was purchased. The upshot of my letter is that that lot ought to be built on, of course. The lot ought to be built on, but maybe not with a 3,200 square foot building. None of us have a 3,200 square foot building at the end of Honeysuckle Lane. A normal single family home for the neighborhood fits on that lot. These adjustments are not necessary to rectify a wrong, so to speak, if that's what, you know, this is being presented to us as a necessary major adjustment. I finally want to say, you know, all of this is business here. This is not personal. I hope to one day be neighbors with the Alvis family. We had a great chance to chit chat before this thing started. There are no hard feelings here. I had a chance to meet Mr. Leo. He's a beautiful young boy, and we wish everybody the very best. I want to say one final thing. Mr. Brown put up an exhibit earlier about his research into what the view shed looks like. Criterion 4 on the application is that the special circumstances of the subject property, or criterion 5 will not injure and adversely impact legal conforming uses. I'm the adjacent property owner. From my deck, I can stare down the Yampa River watershed several hundred yards. We look at the river, we watch the forest, we watch the wildlife that come in from that forest. Today, I walked the lot line, not on their property, on the adjacent lot line. I measured the distance, which is stated in the application about what the actual distance between pavement and the southwest corner of that front lot, that front corner of the building will be. It was stated to be something like 26.5 feet, 25.5 feet. I measured out over 30 feet to account for the angled distance, the circular distance. And that's absolutely going to completely block our view of the downstream of the Yampa River. So, you know, I don't want to make a big deal about that, but there are justifications are under criterion 5 to deny the application. So thank you for listening to me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Chesfold?
I do have one question. Do you believe that if the setback exception was not granted, that your view shed would not be impacted?
10 feet is a lot in that little cul-de-sac. And yes, if you add another 10 feet to that, then the view that Mr. Brown had portrayed in that image, that the edge of that building is going to sit back into where those willow trees are. For purposes of my view shed, that's absolutely true. And I did state that in my
Thank you.
response letter.
Any other questions, Mr. Chesfold? Thank you. Is there anyone else for the public who wishes to speak to the agenda item number 1, the PL 2023-0103-2988 Honeysuckle Lane? Seeing none. Does the board have any questions of anyone before we begin deliberations?
I have one question I was meant to ask the applicant. And that was, in your designing this building, how much effort was put, I mean, to eliminate that 10 feet that we're asking for?
Could you please come, are you going to address that? Please come up to the podium so we can record your answer.
Amelia Alvis, applicant. Yes, a lot, I can't tell you how many iterations I went through that to make sure that doesn't happen. And I guess in kind of, I wish I had my computer because I have renders, but in kind of Jeremy's, like, that is accurate. Like, we are tucked into that grove of trees. We don't come into the river view at all. That's the neighboring property. And so, and I wish I could, if I had my computer, I could prove that because I have a mapped out render of that. But yes, in designing this, like, I went through 1.5 million, I think, iterations of trying not to come into that setback. And it's just because the nature of a garage and to be able to access your garage plus your house, the wedge of the lot requires us to come forward. And so I guess I swore that was true. And
Thank you. Any other questions?
I do. I kind of understand the setback situation, but I'm not sure if I really understand it. The Army Corps of Engineers came up with the building envelope based on flood hazard somehow.
It is not a fully platted building envelope. That is a term we reserve specifically for on a plat if, we delineate where a building envelope is.
Right.
In this case, we've contrived the building envelope using the restrictions here, being from the rear one, principally being from the Army Corps of Engineers, and that permit along with the stone wall that was constructed, and then using the city's front setback standards and side setback standards. When we piece everyone's requirements together, the magenta line shown is what we're referring to as the building envelope.
So the Army provided somebody with a permit then, right?
1980, they
Yeah.
permit where they
And
filled-
that indicated that back line.
yes.
Yes.
And that
filled-
was that mathematically? Or was that like a based on some kind of high water or something? Or was that a mathematical line that curve 9 there? Was that came out of the permit?
That came out of the permit, and I don't know what instructed them to make that. I don't even know the impetus of the permit, if they were creating wetlands based on remediating somewhere else, or if there were wetlands on site and they were establishing impact boundaries. Maybe you know more, Amelia.
Yeah, I believe from the permit, they, in order to make the lot buildable.
Right.
They filled dirted, I think, I want to say 7 to 8 feet. And it was supposed to be 60 feet to provide a normal building envelope within that lot. It was supposed to be the front 60 feet. Again, they didn't build the wall along that line.
Who did that?
The Army Corps of Engineers,
They actually built the wall.
as far as I know. I haven't found any contracts or anything that they hired it out.
We don't know who built, that seems weird that we don't know who built the wall.
As far as I know from my conversation with the gentleman, they built the wall. Again, there was nothing in the rhetoric that they hired that out.
So then how can you, and you said that the wall can't be moved. Per
Ye-
the,
Because now anything below the wall, although they established this line, doing work to that wall would involve them working in and outside of that permit zone. You can see where the wall crosses the work boundaries that the 1980 permit allows. So, I mean, I wouldn't know the particulars. Maybe they could readjust this, but my assumption now is that this is all incorporated wetlands, and that would be an impossible move as well. So the wall's sort of stuck as condition of the site.
Seems a little, because obviously, as you can see, if you have plenty of room for this, and you wouldn't have to have any kind of variances to push the house back. It is in the record? What does it say?
Yeah,
Can you
come-
come to the
We need to
microphone?
find out, I just gotta feel comfortable with what's going on out here.
Sure. So as part of the narrative, the offices submitted email correspondence with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And so we're discussing the original permit and the way that it was filled. So Tucker Fader, Regulatory Project Manager, Southern Colorado. Oh, my computer's gonna die. I'm gonna read really quickly. In the future, if they would like to rework the rock wall to match the 60-foot setback, that is something we can also discuss. We would be amenable to them moving it to the 60-foot mark across the board if need be. So an idea of, someone inartfully built this wall and now it's the end all be all and can never be adjusted. Now, if you take a look at the wall, and if that wall is moved back, it seems to me that we're going to gain 10 feet of building space that they're lawfully entitled to.
Yeah. And it takes away the whole problem. Plus it,
Can I ask, when you say that's in the record, that's not in our packet, right? That's in the project file?
Yeah, it must in the project file.
from the Army? Or?
That particular email that you were just reading.
I'm reading, but I'm.
Yeah, it is documents submitted.
Okay,
It's addendum to the narrative.
okay.
I will say,
In the Army's file, not our file.
I think it's in our file. It should be in our.
It's in the project file. You would not have received it in your
Oh,
packet,
Oh, okay.
likely.
So it's not the Army's website. You were at the city's.
He's at the city's website
Oh,
with
okay.
this project file.
Okay.
I will say in that, even though the Army messed up, they will not pay for it. So that I've had that priced out and it's over $100,000. So just.
Hey, has everybody had a chance to discuss this thoroughly? See no further discussion. The staff's recommendation is to approve PL 20230103. I will entertain a motion from the board with respect to the staff's recommendation.
Well, I guess along Tom's lines of questioning, I had thought about requesting a copy of that Army Corps permit and I didn't. And now in retrospect, I sort of wish I had. And this additional correspondence.
So thinking of that rock wall, in my mind, if somebody said you can rework the rock wall, then I don't think this is a minimum relief. Because if the rock walls can be moved, then that's more work. And then the relief would be much less because you could go further out. It may only be a 1 foot thing. That's why I'm just thinking that this may not be the minimum relief because they didn't do everything they can do to make it not need a variance. And I know what that's like.
But that would create an increased burden on the current owner of the property.
No, they're the ones asking to build the house, not, they're the ones that they're causing their own hardship in a sense. But if they move the wall, they don't have a hardship and they don't have a variance, they don't need a variance. And we won't be sitting here and they can build whatever they want. That's part of the problem is the building is tall, big, tall building right there at the end of the cul-de-sac. And I think that's part of what the neighbors are not excited about. So if you want to put a big, tall building at the end of the cul-de-sac, you don't come in and ask for a variance, in my mind. Because that's not.
We're getting ahead of ourselves here. We need a motion and then we can continue the discussion.
That was my theory about I wasn't gonna.
So we need a motion one way or the other, either to approve the application or deny the application, and then we can discuss it.
How about a move to table?
We can do that too. I mean, I don't like doing that.
What would we want to learn through tabling it?
I would like to see the actual Army Corps permit, the correspondence between the applicant and the Corps, the city and the Corps, and have the applicant and the neighbors give them a chance to address whether or not this rock wall really is a fixed, strict constraint. So I guess that being said, I'll make a motion to table the application.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Um,
Well, I would just add that I see it similarly to Tom Effinger as well, that, you know, being able to build within that pink line would create more opportunities for the homeowner to stay within the bounds of the of the city regulations. So that makes sense to me to stay within those pink lines if the Army Corps of Engineers approved the moving of the rock wall alongside the construction, and then not to need the variance and not to cause the hardship on the neighbors seems like a good choice, if that's possible. Again, not having seen that conversation with the Army Corps, just adding that.
Any further discussion on the motion to table? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I would like to see it, some more information on that rock wall.
Motion carries. Matters tabled. Jeremy, let's see if we can get this information to the board members as quickly as possible.
Sure.
And let's reschedule, schedule the continuation of this hearing as soon as we can.
Absolutely.
Michaela, did you vote? I'm sorry,
Did Caitlin, we didn't hear. from
yeah,
Caitlin.
I'm sorry. When I don't see you, I
I'm right behind you.
did, yeah, I know you are.
You can't
That's why I don't see
see me.
you. I don't have eyes in the back of my head. But you're over here on the side too. Did you did you vote?
I didn't.
Well, do you want to vote?
No.
Or you're
The
abstaining?
table is gonna pass, so I'm just gonna let it pass.
You're gonna abstain.
Yes.
Let the record reflect that Caitlin McKenzie has abstained. All right, so the motion is tabled and I talked to Jeremy, let's do this as quickly as we can. We don't want everybody waiting. And Mr. Cheswold.
A procedural timeline that you have to operate under, or like by right, the variance is granted because you didn't act within a certain amount of time. I just want to make sure that we're following procedure.
No,
Okay,
we, one way or the other, we definitively either approve it or disapprove it, but we have the ability to table for more information.
okay, thank you.
It will come back to the next public hearing, the next meeting for Board of Adjusters, which I will look up and we can announce.
I think it's what, the third Thursday of the month.
Yeah, I know sometimes things get funny around the holidays, so I wanted to double check.
But if we can expedite this,
Do you want to do a special
we
meeting
do- if
before
we
the
could
next?
let's see how the calendar works. We do a special meeting if we can. I think that'd be fair to all the parties.
Okay, it's,
If we can, we can, we can't, we can't.
the next scheduled one is 10/19. And we'll see about a special meeting. I don't know if that'll be possible by, or if we'd have to send out some sort of, publish some notice for it or not.
Yeah, we
I'll
have to go
refer-
through some procedures. Let's see what they are. We'll see if we get an earlier date, but if not, it's October 19th.
Yep.
And there's nothing already in the file about the Army Corps of Engineers that the planning officer has. It's something you have to request separately.
We have information tangential to it, but I think if you want to scrutinize over it, I want to provide you the full report as much as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Jeremy, I think it'd be good for the board to also understand, is what was sent, is that the Army Corps definitively saying they could do something? Or does this open up a large request to Army Corps that could take years?
That's an excellent point. We'll provide as much information around that USACE permit as we can.
Thank you.
Great, yeah, more information sounds helpful.
Okay, the motion to table has been passed. I apologize to the applicant that we haven't got an answer for you, but I think this is fair to all concerned to have the opportunity to delve into this a little bit further. With that, agenda item number 1 is done. The applicant is free and the members of the public are free to leave, or you can hang around while we approve minutes. Okay, next item on our agenda is the approval of the Board of Adjustment minutes from our July 20th, 2023 hearing. Everybody have an opportunity to review the minutes?
I was on vacation and not at that meeting, so I will.
You were, that's right, you were marked absent. Any amendments to the July 20th, 2023 minutes?
I didn't see anything.
And Jeremy, you're certainly excused, but don't leave until we finish the hearing. I want to have a,
Yeah, I'll be around.
okay. All right, my only adjustment to the July 20th minutes is on page 6. Board member questions should be moved to the next page so that the heading follows some text.
Way to go.
Entertain a motion with that correction. I'll entertain a motion to approve the July 20th, 2023 minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the July 20.
Tom moves.
I'll second that.
Dave seconds. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The minutes of the July 20th, 2023 meeting are approved as amended. Moving to the August,
She abstained again.
the August 17th, 2023 minutes.
Oh, see, I had a conflict of interest and had to step down from this meeting, so
But
awesome.
Ryan, the minutes said you were absent. Weren't you here? And then just recuse yourself?
I think I sent an email beforehand.
That's right. That's right. So you were not here. So absent is correct. Okay, anybody have any amendments to adjustments to the August 17th, 2023 meeting minutes?
Oh,
I
will make a motion to approve them.
is there a second?
Second.
Second with Tom. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 You opposed?
Hey.
Okay, the minutes of the August 17th, 2023 meeting of the Board of Adjustments are approved as presented. I have one last comment. I'm looking at our packet for this evening, and I'm looking at page 17, project timeline. Public hearing at the bottom says Board of Adjustments. We are the Board of Adjustment. So let's have, going forward, let's have that corrected in the packet. Is there anything further that come before the Board of Adjustment?
I already did mine.
Maybe I just caught it for the first time. I don't know. Is there anything further come before the Board of Adjustment?
Nope.
If that's the case, I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 6:05 PM.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second? Second. We are adjourned at, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor?
We are adjourned at 6:06 PM.
Got it in there.